I enjoy cultural appropriation. It's one thing to pay lip service to your own culture and history through entertainment you create. It's another thing altogether when someone with an outsider's perspective does it. Probably explains why I find Hideo Kojima's Metal Gear Solid games about the United States and Americans so charming, and it's probably why I wouldn't like Ghost of Tsushima as much as I did if it had been made in Japan. Had Japanese developers been in charge, this game likely would have wound up looking like an anime, with overly stylized combat and cinematics, along with every female character looking like a 16-year-old with a boob job. They couldn't copy Kurosawa films even when they had one of his unfinished scripts on hand to guide them. Looking at you, Neo, when dealing with our global anime problem, the best way to counter it is to allow people with an entirely different fetishized view of Japan make the entertainment. It still produces a fetishistic piece of entertainment, but a healthy fetish, like CBT. Battling at night was not something armies did back in these days. Something about not being able to see what you were doing. In the era before electric lighting, actual darkness was pretty effing dark, so trying to engage in a melee fight in that condition is better avoided, unless you want to discover you savagely chopped the head off of your best friend because you couldn't tell who you were swinging at in the darkness.
I am Harunobu Adachi, descendant of the legendary Yoshinobu Adachi.
Kotenkan's introduction is great. Setting a samurai on fire with wine instead of dueling him as requested. It gets across the samurai code and how rigid and unprepared it was for battling the Mongols without saying a single word. If only Kotenkan remained this practical throughout the entire game though. The Mongol invasion of Tsushima is the first recorded use of black powder outside of China, so its use here is correct. But I would expect some shock and awe from the samurai at the sight of flaming exploding balls of fire raining down on them. That would be damn near sorcerous to them. I ended up really liking the combat system in Ghost of Tsushima. It's realistic, pretty snappy, and every enemy encounter I had was usually a unique fight and had a chaotic feel to it, and here is where that "but" you were expecting invades that praise. I'm not going to overlook the lack of a dedicated lock-on option, which I think led to some of that chaos. Since often I couldn't control who Jin would attack, so I would end up swinging my katana in a stance meant to counter shield carriers at a spear wielder instead, who would then effortlessly parry my attack and run a lance through my temple. Then there's the camera, which never felt like it worked right, and would often show me the inside of a wall or a close-up of Jin's face whenever I had to fight in a cramped environment. Save the close-ups for the cutscenes game, and get these issues ironed out for the sequel so I can take a sin off for an otherwise great combat system. Jin and his uncle Shimura were the last two samurai who remained alive after the failed bonsai charge on the beach, so they decide to face Kotenkan head-on when explosives send them flying. Jin comes to and sees his uncle being captured, then takes a couple arrows to the spine and goes down again, only to wake up days later, having been dragged away from the beach by Yuna. How she knew Jin was still alive is never explained, since he had a couple arrows sticking out of him and wasn't moving, and I doubt she had the option of checking through samurai lying on the beach for a pulse when Mongols were running around.
I am Khotan, cousin of Kublai, grandson of Genghis.
Which grandson though? Genghis Khan didn't fuck around when it came to fucking around.
Your traditions, your beliefs, which villages to tame and wish to burn.
What Khotan failed to learn was that he should sell his invasion fleet to the Japanese mainland after capturing the island instead of dicking around here for weeks and months over one guy while accomplishing nothing. As thick as that Mongol's armor looks, Yuna's knife goes right through it. Ghost of Tsushima is a pretty impressive historical simulator, only taking a few artistic liberties, mainly by including elements of Japanese culture into the game's setting before they actually existed, like haiku and bushido. But that's the kind of artistic license I feel is pretty acceptable. That's why I'm only going to send one of those liberties: the existence of katanas in the game, since the creation of the katana is actually tied to the Mongol invasion of Tsushima. The swords samurai were using at the time were called Tachi, and they did a poor job penetrating Mongol armor, hence why the katana was created afterward to rectify that problem. Most people wouldn't be able to tell you the difference between a Tachi and a katana anyway, so their exclusion isn't necessary even if you want the cool factor of a katana. This is more of a missed opportunity. The game could have still featured a katana if it wanted, and even make it a major plot point by having Jin wield the very first one as the weapon that gave him the edge to take on the Mongols more efficiently.
I am no coward! Your enemy is no match for you.
In this flashback, Jin took his father's katana without permission to practice with it. His uncle, Lord Shimura, catches him in the act, but I can't see how Jin wasn't aware of his uncle's presence. He was standing just behind him as Jin started swinging the sword around, and it's not like his uncle blends in with the leaves.
My brother. The Mongols took him.
That's why you saved me.
Yuna saved Jin's life because she needs his help rescuing her brother Taka. When you examine the series of events, it doesn't add up. She would have rescued Jin shortly after the attack on the initial Mongol invasion of the beach, before the Mongols could have captured her brother on a different part of the island. And her bright idea to save Taka was a near-dead samurai she found on the beach, who she had no way of knowing whether he would live or be in any condition to fight if he recovered.
We could cause a distraction. Sneak in.
No. We walk in the front gate. Kotenkan set fire to our best swordsman. Humiliated my uncle. Butchered the warriors of Tsushima. I'm going to repay his kindness.
By repeating the same mistakes that got your friends killed.
That's what the Mongols will think. But this time, I'll strike first.
You struck first last time, unless Jin means a samurai who went down to face Koten Khan and was set on fire. Jin actually does the same thing as him here. Yell loudly to get the Khan's attention for a showdown. It goes about as well.
Enough. Surrender.
For a guy who bragged about how much he studied his enemy before coming here, Koten Khan really doesn't understand the samurai belief of fighting until death and no surrender. Jin survives this. Doesn't even drop his katana. Ghost of Tsushima has a lot in common with Assassin's Creed, mostly in a positive way, because it takes everything Assassin's Creed does and does it better. However, dead parents for character motivation rears its head here as well. Jin's father was killed by bandits right before Jin's eyes as he hid in fear. Why was Jin even there in the first place, since his father is in full armor? I assume it was a military campaign, yet he brought his young son along with him to the battle. Jin must have been in the water for a very long time. It was night when Koten threw him off the bridge, yet he walks onto the beach in daylight. From time to time, I had to smack my face over how pretty this game looks, though it does cheat a bit to do it. I can't tell you whether this game takes place during the spring or fall, since it seems to be a mix of the two seasons. The game implements a rather novel navigation system where you swipe the touchpad to blow wind in the direction of your marked objective. It's a feature I can get behind, since it keeps me from staring at a minimap with GPS lines drawn on it for hours on end. Other open world games might as well have the same graphics as found on the Atari due to how much time you spend looking at a two-dimensional minimap, though I suppose that this game would qualify as a horror game to those with pollen allergies due to the amount of dust and pollen your guiding wind kicks up.
We have to go in quietly.
Like thieves.
Ghost of Tsushima plays around with a morality system, sort of how Sucker Punch's old Infamous games did, but it's only surface level, and your playstyle changes nothing but the weather. You can play the game as a stealthy assassin who stabs people in the back, or confront everyone head-on samurai style, without it really affecting the plot. The issue being cutscenes where Jin takes the non-samurai route with you having no control over it, and this ends up being a major plot element later. On one hand, I'm actually glad they didn't tie this game to such a system, but they do offer the illusion of it while forcing the story in one direction.
You deserve better than this. Convince your people to stop resisting, and you can walk free.
Since when were Mongols this into negotiation? If you didn't surrender immediately, they wiped you out to serve as a lesson to the next person they faced. The face wound Jin gave to Koten back on the bridge healed remarkably fast. Ishikawa is the master archer Jin needs to help retake Castle Canada, but he's tied up in the affair of his student who betrayed him and is now working for the Mongols to teach them the way of the bow, which is a pretty laughable idea. One of the reasons Mongols were the dominant military force of their time was their skill with archery, especially while on horseback, which is something that never happens in this game oddly. The few times I encountered mounted Mongols, they never used bows. It can be hard to write characters in an open world game, along with writing a compelling plot. The trade-off between linear storytelling versus an open world to explore at your own leisure is a big one. You might be able to add a few memorable characters to the game, but often the plot will either plot along or end up being competent enough to get the job done without tripping over itself. And that's how I feel about Ghost of Tsushima's plot. The game has come dressed for success, but the characters pale in comparison to the exploration and combat. That's why for the first half of the game, you spend all of your time gathering allies and dealing with their assorted personal issues to get them to help you storm the castle to rescue Jin's uncle. Then after you do that, you have to do the same thing again for an entirely different castle, and then do it a third time in the final act. And it isn't like those characters you gather are standouts. They, like the plot, are there to get the job done. You might as well give them yellow hard hats and orange vests and traffic wands that guide cars along. Ryuzo leads a Straw Hat Ronins, a group of desperate mercenaries that are starving to death. Starvation after a Mongol invasion would be a real possibility, but the only people who seem to be starving are the Straw Hats. No other town or survivor camp is hurting for food.
This was only a temporary depot. They're taking everything. Offshore.
The boats are in the bay.
How exactly are you planning to get enough food to feed a small army off a Mongol ship with just the two of you? That takes time, and the distraction on the beach would only buy you so much. After raiding a fort only to find the Mongols had moved the food to a ship, and then finding the ship also had no food, I have to wonder what the Mongols stationed here were eating.
An iron hook with a rope attached to the end. You can use it to climb walls.
Yuna made her brother Taka out to be the best blacksmith on Tsushima, able to forge the tool Jin would need to scale Castle Canada's walls. But all he makes is a simple grappling hook, something any blacksmith could have forged.
Jin! Where are you?
Ryuzo?
Tsushima Island is pretty big, yet Ryuzo somehow found Jin in Komatsu village with no way of knowing where he would be. With the addition of the grappling hook, Ghost of Tsushima becomes another game that adds to the growing Batman singularity, the point at which all games inevitably become Batman. Not that the game was trying too hard to avoid that outcome, with people referring to Jin as the Ghost and later giving him a black suit to wear.
It doesn't make any sense.
What doesn't?
My men said the Mongols didn't hurt them. They fed them. Good food, too.
After saving Ryuzo's men from the Mongol fort they were being held in by capturing it, the Straw Hats' food problem should be solved. Ryuzo even mentions that the Mongols fed his men that were locked up here, so they could just take the food that was stored here, but they don't.
Your ancestral castle lies to the north, yes? I look forward to visiting it, while I leave you here to starve to death.
Why haven't you already done that? You left half the island outside of your control while you had pointless talks with Lord Shimura. On that same note, why are you still in Tsushima? The point is to invade mainland Japan and take control of it. The longer you wait around here, the more time the Shogun has to shore up his defenses.
The Khan put a bounty on the ghost. Anyone can claim it.
When Jin attacks Castle Kaneda, he finds Ryuzo waiting there for him to claim the bounty on Jin's head since his men are still starving. If Ryuzo wanted money, he could have sold the information about Jin's raid on the castle to the Mongols. In fact, since the Mongols let Ryuzo sit around in the castle to wait for Jin, they would have to know that Jin was coming tonight, yet they made no preparations and are taken by surprise by Jin and his allies, and Koten even leaves Shimura here. Why take Lord Shimura out of his cage and keep him in a room while the castle is being raided? He's Koten Khan's biggest hostage. Why not take him to the other fortress or kill him? History tells me that the aristocracy wouldn't give much of a damn about invaders burning a few peasants outside of the castle, or at least not enough to open the gates and surrender without a fight.
Return home and claim your father's honor. Recruit the peasants of Yarikawa. I will petition the Shogun for reinforcements.
Act 2 is exactly the same as Act 1. Travel around, gain new allies, and take a different castle.
How we get a message to the mainland?
I have unsavory friends of my own. A pirate named Goro.
Even if you know someone who can slip past the Mongol blockade, any reinforcements the Shogun would send would have to break through the same blockade and fight their way onto the island. And the Mongol ships have mortars.
We will take back your castle, uncle.
And destroy the Mongols.
This sounds like the plan you should have come up with when the Mongols first arrived instead of leading a suicide charge against them on the beach.
We were ambushed and taken captive, shoved into a covered pit. No food. So dark I couldn't see my hands in front of my face.
For someone who was only moments ago starving after weeks in a pit, Norio doesn't look it.
We can help break the siege outside your walls. In return, Lord Shimura requests your help.
The Mongols want to conquer the mainland. They will lose interest in us.
The Mongols built quite the reputation during their campaigns. This is the same army that destroyed an entire Middle Eastern kingdom for offending the Khan, right down to every last man, woman, and child they could find. And you think that the Mongols at your gate demanding you surrender or die will forget you and head for the mainland? The Mongols break through Yarikawa's gate in the initial attack, are beaten back by Jin and the people, then resort to siege weaponry before sending men through again, which is the opposite way of laying siege to a fortified location. You would start by using your siege weapons and starvation to soften the target before you ever sent troops over the wall. The combat has been realistic up until this point when Mongols start setting their swords on fire and Jin activates his devil trigger. Setting your sword on fire may look cool, but it's just going to ruin the temper on your blade.
Your friend defeated one of my best generals. My men have started to believe he's invincible. You will prove them wrong.
Or you could just leave for the Japanese mainland and stop worrying about Jin and this island. Koten Khan already gave up on convincing Shimura to side with him. So what is keeping him here? If he sails away, Jin is no longer his problem.
There are many ways to eliminate a foe. Find another.
What if we didn't have to kill him?
So instead of killing Jin, you want to capture him alive. Something that is a lot harder to do than killing someone.
The Khan's army must have marched past here. Have you had any trouble?
A few bandits, nothing I can't take care of.
Koten Khan weirdly didn't have Jin's family home destroyed or its caretakers like Yuriko killed despite all the problems Jin is causing him. He is one forgiving Mongol. Japan is getting off easy.
I've come for my father's... my armor.
I hid it somewhere safe.
Yuriko hid the armor Jin's father used to wear. She must have forgotten where she placed a few pieces of it, like the shoulder plates and the helmet. Since you have to upgrade it to get the entire set, Jin's father died wearing the full armor, so it should have been intact. After teaching Jin how to make poison, Yuriko has a day out with Jin before dying in the most cliché way possible. I'm not even sure what killed her. She was fine when Jin arrived home, other than some normal memory loss from aging. Then she suddenly developed a cough on this mission and was dead within minutes. Japanese colds or something else. I was under the impression that Jin and Lord Shimura were the only two samurai remaining on Tsushima, while planning to storm a fort so Goro can sail for the mainland with a message for the Shogun. Two other samurai are following Lord Shimura and help out, and I'm just thinking, where did they come from?
We have a hwacha.
A weapon of the enemy.
The hwacha wasn't invented until the 1500s and was used to thwart the Japanese invasion of Korea. You also couldn't instantly reload the hundreds of arrows once you ran out, nor would you want to stand directly behind one while the rockets are igniting. That's where the exhaust would be directed. Jin should walk away from this thing covered in soot and third-degree burns.
These mercenaries are poised to strike our flank.
Do you know where Ryuzo is now?
Not far. Fort Koyasan.
Ryuzo's plan to deal with Jin was to drop hints of his whereabouts so Jin would come looking for him. So far, that's a solid start, but then it just gets lazy. He waits around in this fort, and when Jin finally shows up, a straw hat comes up from behind and whacks Jin on the head. He may as well have propped a box up with a stick and waited for Jin to crawl under it.
You were gone so long. I knew you were in trouble. I came to help, but the Mongols caught me.
Taka is also captured during the assault in a lazy manner. He was safe after causing the distraction, and had to return while Jin was unconscious in order to be captured.
Convince your people to join me, and I will give them peace.
The Mongols never really cared much about your cooperation. If you didn't do what they wanted, they either killed you or marched you in front of their army as a living shield. Khoten wanting Lord Shimura and now Jin to side with him is pointless. The amount of opposition on Tsushima is pretty small to begin with, and certainly not worth wasting all this time over.
Your friend died for you. Now I must find another, and you must choose again.
Khoten thinks it'll be possible to convince Jin to side with him after killing Taka right before his eyes, because he doesn't kill Jin when he has the perfect chance to, and even leaves the fort. Carrying Jin's head around on a pike would be pretty effective at squashing resistance too. Well, that was piss easy to escape from. The Mongols even left all of Jin's equipment and his katana nearby.
You must be our reinforcements.
That is correct. I am Lord Sadamane Oga, bannerman to the Shogun.
No mention of how the Shogun's samurai reinforcements managed to get past the Mongol fleet surrounding the island.
Samurai pride themselves on their honor code, but it also makes them rigid, predictable, easy to break. Ghost has no limits. This makes him dangerous.
Maybe you should have killed him when you had him tied up then. I know I keep going on about the Khan, but that's because I actually like him as a character. So to see him stringing along the plot with stupid decisions is a shame.
Run, cowards! Jin! What are you doing?
Clearing the way.
Not like that. Never like that. Face them as a warrior with honor.
All of this stuff about honor and facing your enemy really only applied to other samurai in the more ritualistic combat between them. If a samurai were facing bandits or foreign invaders, they would have few restrictions on how to combat it. The samurai would see the Mongols as having no honor, so most of those concepts go right out the window, even more so when a samurai is completely surrounded by foreign invaders.
We will strike before they regroup and end this war tomorrow.
You sent our men to die.
They are soldiers.
Their blood is on our hands.
I don't recall Jin getting this upset over the previous time Shimura led a charge against the Mongols that resulted in a lot of casualties.
He'd want you to have it.
Yuna gives Jin some armor Taka had been making for him. She didn't show up in the cutscene carrying clothes. Looking at the ghost armor, it seems like an armload too. Jin only poisons 2 flasks of milk, yet it poisons every Mongol in the castle. This poison acts within seconds. At best, the first few people to drink it should have started vomiting blood, and then the rest would have known something was up.
Where's the Khan?
He rode north. Made me stay behind to collect the ghost's head.
What exactly is Khoten Khan's plan now? He's lost control of most of the island. After accomplishing nothing, only now does he plan to sail for the Japanese mainland while Tsushima slips from his grasp.
He defended us!
By spreading fear and chaos.
How has Jin spread fear and chaos? It's not like there were any witnesses. All of the Mongols here are dead.
The Shogun will demand a head. But it does not have to be yours. I know. She drove you to this.
Uncle.
Renounce the ghost. You must blame her for this outrage.
Seems like a hard sell when he's covered in blood and the other samurai saw him use poison once already. Wouldn't lying and casting blame on another be dishonorable?
Go.
They just let Yuna run off with Jin's sword like that.
A reward for helping retake his home.
I'm watching the prisoner.
He's not going anywhere. Wait too long, and your friends will drink it all.
Everyone should know that the sake merchant Kinji is one of Jin's allies. He was at the camp right before the attack on the Mongols, yet the guard leaves him alone to go drink sake. He also left the key to the cell behind as well, because Kinji opens Jin's cell after the guard leaves.
She's waiting in kin with your equipment.
Jin did give Yuna his sword before telling her to leave, but the rest of Jin's equipment should be here somewhere after he was placed in custody. Maybe close the gate instead of letting him ride out of it, or maybe chase after him on your own horses. Jin should not have been able to escape on a dying horse. The northern tip of the island isn't so far north that it should be frozen over. All 4 seasons now seem to be happening simultaneously on Tsushima.
Blood poured from his mouth. Smells like wolf's bane. The Mongols learned how to make my poison.
The Mongols somehow got their hands on Jin's poison without ever having a sample of it. All of the Mongols at the castle died of the poisoning, so they couldn't have taken the milk flask and examined them. And Yuriko died after showing Jin how to make it. Without seeing which plant Jin uses for it, they somehow figured it out and managed to find a supply of the flowers here in the frozen over northern part of the island.
Poison me. I can lose them in the storm.
The Mongols come from the frozen steppe. I don't think a little wind and snow is going to deter them that much, especially when Jin collapses 10 feet from where they shot him. The Mongols couldn't find Jin in the storm, but Yuna did. This makes twice now that she has inexplicably rescued Jin. That poison is so lethal it acts instantly, leaving the person on the ground choking on their own blood, and there is no antidote, yet Jin somehow survives it easily.
What's in all these barrels? Supplies?
Flowers. Poison. One barrel holds enough to kill hundreds. Khan will use this against the mainland. We can't let him leave Tsushima.
Hundreds, you say? The Mongols were only responsible for killing millions with standard weapons, yet they need this poison as their secret sauce to conquer Japan. Makes you wonder how the Mongols conquered most of the known world around this time without poison. I also find it hard to believe that the Mongols only just recently came across the idea of poisoning after Jin started using it. These are the same Mongols that catapulted diseased corpses over castle walls to spread plague among their enemies.
Look at the waves. They're flat.
The kind you see before a storm.
The Mongol fleet was crippled by a typhoon, not a blizzard. The Mongol fleet is never even destroyed in this game, and I was kind of looking forward to that moment. I suppose having samurai row up to crippled Mongol ships to slaughter and burn tired and injured enemies alive would clash with the plot focused on fighting with honor.
Khan is almost ready to sail for our mainland. With ships full of men, explosives, and my poison.
What exactly is Khotun Khan waiting for now? He has all the poison he needs. He should just sail away.
But we need more fighters.
No.
My uncle wants the Khan dead as much as we do. He'll join our attack.
He'll throw you in prison.
I'll write him a message. Leave it in his quarters.
You could also just send a messenger with your letter.
The people of your mainland will suffer.
The poison plotline never really came together for me, and proves that there wasn't a whole lot of effort put into Khotun Khan's goal. Only his presentation. His goal changed multiple times over the game so he would have a reason to stay on the island instead of leaving for Japan. And now some simple poison is supposed to be the major threat that has to be stopped. The poison can't be that useful of a weapon if Jin can take a faceful of it and shrug it off.
And another will come.
Sequel baiting. But then again, that is historically what happened.
The Khan is dead, but his army is still here. Our home won't be safe until we drive them out to sea.
Even with Khotun Khan dead, the Mongol fleet still isn't sailing for Japan. Like, what are they even doing here now?
The Shogun has declared you a traitor.
He ordered you to kill me.
Either the Shogun is dumb or someone is lying to him about Jin. The Shogun isn't the honor pope who judges a samurai's actions against some religious doctrine that must be followed to the letter. He's a politician and military leader. If you brought Jin's actions of successfully killing Mongols, including their Khan, while thwarting an invasion of the mainland before him, he would probably wonder why you're wasting his time. Then commend Jin and tell him to do it some more, but that they would make it sound a bit cleaner in proclamations and history books. This is one of those games that makes it all worth it. It hits all three of the basic pleasures of YouTube game reviewers, performs strongly in search algorithms, has a small amount of people trying to stir up impotent controversy over it, and is actually a pretty good game. It ends just before it starts to wear out its welcome, which is something few open world games manage, and the ending feels earned while keeping with the Kurosawa theme. And the best thing about it is how in a few months Assassin's Creed Valhalla releases into a post-Ghost of Tsushima world, and that people may finally smell the thick cloud of extra chromosomes that surround that series, and that our expectations should be a little higher when playing a game set during important history. In hindsight, we lucked out that Ubisoft considered it too cliché to ever set an Assassin's Creed game in Japan. It's possible to achieve a wonderful bit of spite without ever meaning to.